Hello, I'm Leanne. I'm Bloom OT, and this is Growing Strong Roots. And I want to welcome today our guest, Betty Ray. She's an educator, a consultant, group facilitator, and mother. And she has a lot of it is personal experience in navigating the digital online world with her own family and with her clients' families. Her primary focus has been around digital readiness and life skills and how to create rituals for families and schools. During rites of passage, whether that be an age transition, like getting their first cell phone, or a developmental transition, this is her area of specialty. And while I wanted to talk to Betty because we had a lunch a while back, and during that time, I we were talking and she asked me why she thought there were lots more cases of autism, and that spurred the inspiration for getting this work out there. So she's been an inspiration for me for a lot of different reasons and for pursuing this topic. And this is a very timely topic, and it's one that I get asked about all the time. And as an occupational therapist working with kids with ADHD and autism, there's a variety of sensory challenges. Screens have often gotten in the way of those children gaining independent skills and on a developmental timeline. But even more so now, as parents parenting these children, we have to compete with these screens. This topic around raising kids in a complex digital world is personally important to me as I am also raising kids. And I also work with families and helping them navigate the use of screens and other devices in their homes, whether that be in a regulated or unregulated way. So I'd like to start with the big picture because I think many parents feel like something's changed in our world, but can't name exactly what. So I want to ask you, what do you think feels different about raising kids today compared to past generations? Yeah, what like,
Yeah,
and
it's a
especially like adolescence and that sensitive transition period. What can you share with us about that?
yeah, I mean, thank you, and thank you so much for having me, Leanne. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm a huge fan of your work. So it's really an honor to be sharing this topic with you because it's so important, and I just know so many families struggle with it. And I feel like one of the things that I feel like is really obviously the biggest difference, or not obvious, it's insidious, but like it's such a huge difference that families are now contending with technology that is incredibly compelling for a young person, is seeping into our houses without any sort of like understanding of what that's gonna look like, predictability.
Mhm,
There's some kinds of tools that sort of are supposed to help us manage it, but,
mhm,
they're designed to be addictive, and they're designed
mhm,
to really engage on all these different psychological, psychosocial levels, and because of that, it's such a difference for families who grew up with MySpace or grew up with, like, flip phones, or before that even, like,
mhm,
like, so many of us came of age when there was technology was just something that happened in the living room, or it happened, and now these things are in kids' pockets. So it's just a
mhm,
hugely, and I think part of what feels as a parent so daunting is that it we don't always have insight into what is happening or where because it's virtual, so we don't really
mhm,
know what's going on. And yeah, so that I would say
mhm,
that those are like pretty intense for
mhm.
families.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what do you think how do you think that that's shaped the emotional regulation in home, especially of kids who have neurodiversity and differences?
Yeah, I mean, emotional regulation is so complex, as you know. These devices are used to soothe, kids use them to soothe, but it's a complex picture, right? Because on the
Mhm,
one hand, they use them to self-soothe, and there's a sense of, well, I don't have to worry about the hard thing because I can just play on my phone, or I can play on the iPad, or I can play
mhm,
on the computer. And I don't have to sit with difficult, complex feelings. And then when the device and the internet stimulation's not there, there's a sense of like, where does that go? And then there's a
mm,
lack of practice and a lack of capacity because they just don't have the muscle to like sit with difficult feelings.
mm,
So I think what
mhm,
happens in a lot of families that I work with is that they get into a pattern of strict limits, we're gonna stop it at 4 o'clock. We're gonna turn it off. We're gonna have no things in the bedroom,
Mhm.
and then there's just this
Mhm.
escalation of argument,
Mhm.
and the kid is,
Mhm.
pushing back because not just for the regulation, but because the device
Mhm.
offers this richness for their experience
Mhm.
of identity discovery. Who am I? Can learn
Identity.
about who and the sense of agency. I
Mm.
can do things on the internet that I can't do. I can make things
Mm.
happen. And then this
Mm.
belonging, I can find my people. My other
Yeah.
friends who like this game or who are into this music or,
I see.
who use this language. I mean, there's so much
Mm.
richness in that for kids. And then the sense of purpose. I can
Mm.
have my dominion and feel really good about my life
Mm.
because I have a community or I have meaning
Mm.
here. So it's so
Yeah.
not as simple as regulation. I mean, I wish it were because that would be
Yeah.
easier for us to just be like, nope, you got 5 minutes and 10 more minutes and that's it. But there's a richness of
Yes.
development that happens as a result of this thing. And that can also be really scary because sometimes kids find
Yeah.
things that are not great. So that's as the parent, that's I think our
Interesting.
our challenge. Yeah.
It's interesting that you talk about identity and how the digital world can actually shape one's identity. Um, does that have any negative side effects? I mean, I can see some benefits to that, especially if people are having a hard time finding their people. Maybe they are really different, and they're not finding identity within their immediate community. That could be a huge positive, it sounds like, too. So maybe that's another perspective. It's easy to kind of get into this negative framework around like screens are bad and I got to limit them and regulate them heavily. And there's this big emotional fallout. So I'm not doing screens anymore, as a parent.
Right.
But there's potentially like some positives to keep in mind, question mark, around that. And also potentially some downsides in finding people just in the digital space. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question. It's so important because I feel like developmentally kids are wired at this age to be exploring
Mhm.
identity. It's their job to figure out who they are.
Mhm.
And it has so many different tendrils, right? For lack of a better word. And I think one of the things that
Mhm.
can be really amazing, like you said, is like I've talked to like LGBTQ kids, the middle of a community where they're not welcome, and they've been able to find community there. Or
Mhm.
kids who are living in households where it's not safe, or which could be related, I guess, in that first case. But like, for a couple of
Mhm.
places where I've talked to kids, or in other ones where the kids want to, like learn some kind of really arcane like history, and they go into a group and they find other kids that are interested in that, typically adjacent to games. I've seen
Mhm.
that, and the other side of it is the identity piece that can be really problematic, and that can be everything from I did work with a family who the young girl was 12 or so, and she had a relationship with a friend she had never met in person, and there was a sense that that kid was having, some issues with their family and and so she, in solidarity with this other kid, started doing really self-harming behavior because that kid was doing some
Mhm.
self-harming behavior. And so this young person that I was
Mhm.
talking to was engaging in self-harming behavior because of her friend. So there's an
Right.
interesting like, therefore I will no
Yeah.
longer take care of myself, which, as you can imagine in this
Mm.
young person's mind, that's their bestie. And so
Mm.
I think what we parents have to really be aware of is, where is it a positive experience for a kiddo? Where is it a not so
Mhm.
positive experience for kiddo? And how might
Mhm.
we help them navigate to make decisions so that they can sort of see for
Mhm.
themselves? Yeah, maybe the act of
Yeah.
self-harm that you just did is, that might not be a friendship that's really gonna support you long term. It's hard.
Yeah. How do you get them as a parent to understand that within themselves?
Oh, good
That
question.
that solidarity, like there is some harm in that, and that is part of it, and that they're
Yeah.
finding like, well, I'm going to hurt because somebody else is hurting. Then how do you help bridge that gap for them where they can make the connection and see for themselves that this isn't helping you develop friendships, and maybe being able to step in as a parent and say like, okay, let's have a powwow about it and figure out what's going on and dig a little deeper into what is the cause of this harming behavior. with maybe other community members, and how that might be limiting you just have access to them through a digital platform.
Lens, yeah, no, it's so important. I think there's a lot of steps to this. I mean, I think one
Mm,
of the things in this work that's really become clear to me is how relational it is and how important the relationship between parents and kids is. And to keep that
mhm,
relational
mm,
channel open and to do so with a combination of guardrails and attunement. Right? So there's
mhm,
connection, but guardrails. And so that's sort of a frame I think about as I think about the sort of developmental arc. And I've got a interesting work I'm doing now, which I'm kind of psyched about, which I share, but it's cool
yeah,
about
okay.
that. Maybe I'll give you a preview.
They'll be the
'Cause it's,
next episode once it's
I
out
want
and
to.
ready.
It needs to validate a little bit. I want to kick the tires a bit more before I start talking about it. But it's kind of thinking about this developmental scaffold that parents can design
Yeah,
for their kids and for themselves. So the first
right.
foundational piece is, am I as the parent regulated? Am I in my body? Am
Mm,
I grounded? Am I in a state of connection with myself? Because what happens in a lot of these
mhm,
cases, and I work with this a lot, and it happened with me as a mom as well, and my
mhm,
daughter's father, where you get into a state where you start to become concerned. You see something scary, and you're like, I don't
mhm,
like this. I don't think this is good. I'm not liking it. This is, and then you say something, and the kid's like, well, but, and then you're kind of, then you get into a power struggle. And then they start to say, you know what? I'm going to go and do it over here. I'm not going to tell you,
and they
mom.
start sneaking it.
And they
Right.
sneak, and it becomes a source of power and agency, all the things they're looking for, right? But it's not the way that we as parents want to scaffold that for them. They can do
Mm,
that and people end up fine. Some of us were really rebellious as teens and we turned out fine. So I'm not saying no rebellion, rebellion's important in many cases, but
mhm,
in these cases of where do I need to be able to intervene here and start to see like
mhm,
this requires a different kind of parenting than those of us Gen Xers who grew up free range. Like I was like, whatever, you're fine, you're
mhm,
outside, you're good. And so there's a different level of being conscious of as a parent, like what
mm,
is actually happening because we as parents don't have insight
mhm,
the way that my parents had when I was running around outside with my friends. We don't see it. We can't see, we don't know those kids. We don't know what
mm,
their families are. We don't know what they're saying. I mean, my parents didn't listen, but they knew I would come home at dark. You know what I mean?
right.
So
You don't
I
have the
think
same
like,
accountability and the same community that network of being able to catch each other, and you can't actually see what's going on unless I guess you go through their history and try to see
right.
that way too. But that feels a little bit creepy too in some ways. Even though I'm like the parent, I'm like, "Ugh, it feels weird to like be
Yeah.
creeping on my see what they're up to online." I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a
It's
whole
a
thing
yeah.
too.
I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I think that like, sort of these steps are like building this relational connection, and making sure that sort of like
Trust.
because I want to answer your question, like how do I am starting
Yeah.
to see that might be something that's not appropriate. I want them to know that I know. So I might say, I see that you are acting in solidarity with your friend, and I appreciate
Mhm.
your loyalty to them so that it
Mhm.
validates their experience. And then it's like, I'm concerned. Here's my guardrail. I'm concerned that you're, acting in a way that is harming to your body
Mhm.
right now. And I know that your friend needs your support, wants your support. Is there something else that you can do that doesn't hurt you that can help them so that you're honoring their intention and their identity, their belonging,
Mm.
their relationship,
Yeah.
and helping them think
Mhm.
about it, and you might even be able to say,
Mhm.
hey, does that feel like that's going to serve them if you stop eating
Mhm.
in solidarity or if you cut yourself in solidarity? Does that help them
Yeah.
really? Because I'm not.
Yeah.
You can kind of use that little wiggle, for the guardrails so that you can kind of give them a little bit more leadership and direction,
I
if that
understand.
makes
So
sense.
the guardrail is a question that you can ask them to be reflective within themselves. Like, is that helpful for you? Is
Yeah.
that actually showing support for this person? Or is there another way to show support that might not involve you hurting yourself or that other person? Or maybe help them not hurt themselves because hurting themselves is hurting. Like,
Yeah.
let's move away from hurting anybody and maybe problem solve with them, and by asking questions how they can be reflective and still get their intention and feel like solidarity or friendship in those cases. Is that what you would say is a guardrail? Or can you say more about, yeah, say more about
Yeah,
how
I think
other
so.
examples of like how a guardrail could be implemented, and by helping them come up with the intrinsic motivation to put the guardrail on themselves too.
Exactly. And the model that it matters. Right, and like, you're showing them that that matters, like, being kind of critically thinking about their friendships, critically thinking about their behavior, self-reflection, like, all these important skills that that digital media is really pushing into our faces that kids need to know, right? We really need
Mhm,
to have digital, like, self-awareness and self-reflection. So, yeah, I would say
mhm,
another guardrail in it, you might escalate, right? Say there's a do
mhm.
this thing and it's the first time and you're like, wow, I appreciate your desire to be connected, and
Yeah.
maybe like reflect and ask a question. And then maybe it happens again. And then you're like, this is a pattern. And I'm really am
Mhm,
starting to become concerned now because this self-harm is considerably is intense. And I'm wondering, is there, like, kind of push it a little bit further of like, is this friendship good for
mhm,
you? Like, are you thinking of this as good?
mhm,
Because I am starting to worry. And then just again, we all have to use our judgments about how
mhm,
when to sort of go big. But
mhm,
certain point there might be like, I can't let you see this kid anymore. I really do appreciate your loyalty to your friends. I hope you can see that repeated behaviors like this are causing harm to you, and we
mm.
really am your it's my job to make sure that you're safe, and my job to make
Yes.
sure that and I am not seeing your safety right now, and I need you to show me
Mm,
that you can be safe. And so right now that so I need you to stop, and maybe we can revisit this in a month's time or something like that, so that there's a way that you're so that I think that all of these things with these evolution, these sort of these developmental scaffolds that we parents have got to be rolled out gradually. No kid is going to be
mhm.
like, great, I'm one and done, we're good. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Much as it would be great if
Yeah,
it
and so as a parent, part of your job is to keep them safe, and part of keeping them safe is being able to have the observational skills of when a child might be doing harm, or there is harm being done by having certain types of digital media, or maybe there's interactions with others that may be less than safe. How do you clue in that something could be wrong?
Mhm. Yeah, that's so good. I think that we all know when our kids are struggling. Like, we can always feel it. Like, I think
You could feel
it's the
it.
question. You can
Mhm.
feel it. Like, I think it's a matter of from my experience from as a parent, and also in the work that I do with families, there's a lot of sort of trial and error, but like testing and like, are how's it going? And there's inevitably a time where a kid's going to go fine.
Mhm.
It's fine. Don't it's just fine.
Mm.
And then, that's where I respect your, great. That's great. And you give them the
Mhm.
space because that's they're
Mhm.
differentiating. They need to know that they have
Mm.
space, but we do have to keep an ear out. And so I think looking for clues that are things like avoidant behavior,
Mhm.
um, hiding. And they are going to do that again. Like, there's a lot of stuff, mom, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Like, we hide from our parents. It's our job. I think this is the benefit of community is like if your kids are playing together and you're the neighbor or the friend that talking to the other families and other parents just to sort of like, how are you seeing this? Like, so that we can kind of have eyes on each other's kids. That is also something I strongly recommend is to make sure that we can kind of get relationships with the even if it's just on the phone. I mean, I made a connection with a parent once in my own life, in my kid's life, just to be like, hey, are we on a thing? Because they keep their guard up, but they also do let it down. And I think sort of making sure that we as parents are tracking, like, okay, I don't talk to them every day like I used to. Maybe I talk to them once every 2 3 days or once every week. But if as long as there's still some access and you can get in there and really understand what's happening, then it's a moving piece.
I get at this age with adolescence, this differentiation that's happening between parent and child, and they're trying to be independent and have their own lives. And maybe that life is in the digital world. I mean, it just is. Part of their life is going to
Yeah,
be on the digital world.
it
The
is.
statistics for like how many hours kids spend on a screen a day is like outrageous. It's like eight
I
hours a
know.
day, I think. For an
No.
average 14-year-old or something, it's like,
And that's
what?
average.
How is that
I
even
know, that's so crazy.
possible?
I
Are they
know.
going to school? Oh, yeah, they have Chromebooks in school, and then they're on their watches, and then they're on their phones, and then they're like on their iPads, and they're on TV, and then they're texting. Oh, I'm just like, okay, I get it now. It's 12 hours. It's like, my goodness. So,
I
how do
know.
you monitor that and make sure that they're not creeping down like these, the still the wild, wild west of the internet, like we were talking about that in the 90s, right? Like, oh, the wild, wild west of the internet. No, now is actually the wild, wild
Yeah.
west of the
Right. I
internet
know.
because now we have access 24/7 to every, like on your wrist, on your like everywhere. And so it's
Yeah.
almost like this, great social experiment is what Jonathan Haidt calls it for this generation of kids that are growing up with screens. I have my parent controls and things like that and put in place with, some checking in here and there. But there are those times where I walked in on my kiddo, like watching, all of a sudden, Spotify decides to put videos in their music. And like, not just like music videos, but actual TikTok videos
Yeah.
of people doing really nefarious things. And I'm like, what are you watching? I was
I
just
know.
appalled. And like this, I was just like, oh my gosh, this,
Uh,
I don't know. Like, I had this whole emotional reaction, right? How do we like handle that? And my own emotional reaction, and now it's his emotional reaction. And
yeah,
yeah,
right. And then it goes,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. It totally goes like wackadoodle. I know. Yeah, so I have a rant in me which I will spare you, but it is about like why do we let businesses throw things out into the world without validating that there's any
Right.
benefit for humanity and that, because
Hmm.
business models are extractive and they're about attention and they're about,
Hmm.
hooking kids. And there's a lot of interesting, Meta is the Zuckerman is testifying now about Instagram. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting
Hmm.
I think that there's a lot of advocacy to change the role that technology companies can just throw things out into the world and just be like, oh, here's AI, like have at, here's chatbots, hope your
Hmm.
kids don't fall in love with them, but if they do, hopefully they won't kill themselves, like, hope so. Like that's there's advocacy for
Uh,
that. So I think that
yeah,
that's an important,
it's good.
and I encourage people to listen to and follow Fair Play for Kids. They're doing great work pushing for different legislation rather. Same with Jonathan Haidt. Like there's people that are really
Hmm.
raising awareness of the importance of and how like these things are designed to lots of social media, social
Hmm.
dilemma, like a lot of content, Center for
Hmm.
Humane Technology. Like there's so many good resources out there. It's a behemoth that we're fighting, but I think so knowing that there's more, it's not just on each individual parent. It feels that way, but there's a
Hmm.
lot of work.
Hmm.
That said, what do
Oh,
you do
good.
when you walk in on your kid,
Right.
and they're seeing something really horrific? That's another avenue for where this idea of attunement and guardrail is important, right? Because you want to
Hmm.
attune to them. You don't want to shame them. Oh my God, you're watching
Hmm.
porn. I can't believe it. Or whatever, right? You
Oh,
just don't want to
yeah.
freak out, right? You just don't
Yeah.
want to freak out because that sends them into a shame spiral, which we know from all
Hmm.
the research is not going to help them.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so the attunement, what is that? Talk about how that makes you feel. And some kids are not
Hmm.
going to do that. Like, sure, mom,
Hmm.
I'm going to tell you how I feel when I
Hmm.
look at this.
Hmm.
That's not happening.
Hmm.
But, like, understanding, like, hey, that a lot of that stuff is I'm just gonna use, like, the example. Can we say the word porn here? Because like, I know it's blown up
Yeah,
lots of
it's good.
but I
It's fine.
okay. They
Yeah.
put asterisks for the O. I'm like, but just, like, how to talk about these things is just really this is a reality. I understand it's out there, and I just want you, my kiddo, to know that, like, this is, A, not how real relationships are. B,
Hmm.
it's full of imagery that it's not that great, and it can really cause some really major issues later when you're older. So, I
Hmm.
don't think it's a good idea for you to check this out. If you can block it,
Hmm.
great, but they usually find their way around it. So, It's
Mhm.
again that attunement and guardrails, it depends, of
Yeah.
course, on the kid's age. An 18-year-old is gonna have a different conversation than a 10-year-old. But, so
Mhm.
being
Mhm.
age appropriate, I think is important, of course, but, like, yeah, just the guardrails of, like, "Look, th I know this isn't really I want you to know that I know that this isn't gonna be great for you long term, and I want you to have healthy relationships when you're an adult, and it feels really important that you understand that this is, mm, not the greatest for that. It can be really messed up, and it can be harmful to people. It's kinda icky, you know? So, like, being on the same team as your kid, looking outward at the gross thing instead of fighting the kid, you know?
But that's a really good
Yeah, yeah.
distinction between, the looking at it together side by side and looking out at the future versus,
Mhm.
like, coming at it head to head and fighting them on it. Because I'm doing this for you, like, and your future, and helping them to distinguish the feeling that they feel in their bodies when they are experiencing that crazy thing that they're watching on the internet, and they're like, oh, this
Right.
feels like bad, it feels like,
Yeah.
oh, that feeling. It's like, pay attention to that feeling, and that is important to be able to, when you encounter that feeling in other situations, to listen to your body and listen to your moral code in your head about what feels right and what feels wrong, and to be able to learn how to trust themselves in that as well. And then your job, maybe as a parent, is to partner with your kid in their what their future could look like, and why it's important to be mindful about the things that they ingest
Mm.
into their visual, their body, their whatever it is, and the people that they surround themselves with, whether that be online or in person, the kinds of, yeah, just the environment from which we're living through. It's a much more accessible, and like you said, the developmental ages are tricky in that, and it's really difficult to put up those, like, kind of arbitrary guardrails, like in the parent controls. Because even with that Spotify situation, I was like, okay, I'm going on there to Spotify and I'm changing the age to, the 9 plus or whatever. And
Yeah.
then he's like, well, now I can't listen to John Williams. I'm like,
Right.
what?
I
That's
know, so
crazy.
stupid.
Like,
I know.
it's just like so
I
silly the
know.
way that they've, some of the different
Yeah.
age restrictions are set
It's
up.
not
So now
yeah.
they can't listen to the music that they actually are there to listen to. So I was like, okay, fine. And then you're going to lose all your playlists and all this stuff. I was like, fine. You can have the adult, like, Spotify thing, but think about how that feels in your body when we're watching things that are not good for you, and to try to, like, get away from that power struggle and that authority, like, based model of, this is the way it's going to be, and coming down on them, and then, like, partnering with them so that they can look out at the future together, and look, like, teaching them. I love that that is part of your work, is like
Mhm.
teaching kids how to manage themselves in the digital world. Can you share any more strategies around, like, how a parent would do that?
Definitely. Love this question, and I love that you talked to him about feeling into his body. Like, I think that's so important for kids to learn because we just don't teach it. But as an adult, like, I can't tell you how wise my body is and I just really love that you're starting that when he's young because that's something, and work with parents to do that too because it's a really important skill that we just don't teach. But I would say that there's kind of thinking about these sort of developmental arc, if you will, of adolescence. And I think the role of the parent has some stages that we have to do, and so for example, like if your kid is 10 or 8 or 6 or whatever and they're accessing something really gross, you close it down. That's like, you know what, this is not appropriate. There's some things that when you're an adult you can look at, but right now that's not a thing. And so that sort of foundational level of safety. No, I am the mom. No. And then there's opening up the little gate a little bit, and now it's a little bit more about trust, right? So you can go try out a few things, try out some different stations, see what you think. I'm still going to put the guardrails up a lot because my role as a parent is to make sure that I can trust you and that you can trust me. So there's a little bit of back and forth, and it's a little higher, kind of a little more freedom. So they might be able to choose some stations, but like still not see the videos. I'm throwing this out. I don't know what the settings are on Spotify at all. But then once you kind of have a little bit more of trust, then there's a bit more about agency. So can the kids like do the thing on their own? Can they go to the grocery store at the corner and buy a quart of milk? Giving them freedom within so that they're not going to bust out looking for it, so that we as parents give them structured, grounded, like, hey, I want you to, why don't you, this weekend we're going to go, whatever it is, and I want you to do this, this, and this. Do you think you can handle that? I know you haven't done that before. What do you think? Here's the money. I want you to go in there and buy something. Or here's the project is that they can or design something. And then after they get agency, then it's about responsibility. Can you take responsibility for something that's hard? Okay, so you've got to do your homework. How are you going to organize it today? And this is developmental, right? So you don't throw a kid who can't be safe into a responsibility, so giving them scaffolding for these layers, for these developmental milestones,
Mhm.
as a parent is seeing something that we can control this a little bit more so that they don't bust out and then just rebel or go underground.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then I think of service as the last one, which is this way that parents can instill the values of service.
Mhm.
Okay, you're responsible on this. That was great. Now, what does it look like to you've shown that you can raise money and have a lawn care business or whatever the local thing that they're doing. How do you give that back to your community? So that's a way to think about how we can scaffold these different learning developmental stages.
I
Make
love
sense? Did
that.
that answer your question?
Absolutely. No, it does. And it
Okay.
actually it ties into exactly what I was thinking next is like what are like little bite-sized things that parents could do to help kids become more resilient, more independent about their choices online? And how do we feel less overwhelmed as parents as we're navigating this big, open-ended question mark of like, is this okay? Is it not okay? I don't even know. I love
Mhm.
that this idea of independence because, as an occupational therapist, I'm always trying to build on an independence, especially around
Yeah.
occupation. And occupations as a kid, it means going to the store. The world of OT is independent activities of daily living. So we want to
Mhm.
build those independent activities. Can they first of all do all of the things that they need to be doing within their developmental timeline? Like if they're 5, can they tie their shoes? At 6, can they like write their name, write a sentence? At
Yeah.
7, can they wash all of their body parts? No problem. Take a shower on their own, wash dishes, clean up after themselves, these kinds of things. And if not, maybe, spending some more time doing those activities. One of the things that I worry about screens is the opportunity cost
Mm.
time wise, because if we are spending that many hours on screens, what are we exchanging for that? And a lot of that is independence and being able to learn skills in the real world of, how do I go down? I've never had to buy milk before. And they're like 18. It's like, what do you mean? You've never been
I
able to buy
know,
milk
right?
before. I don't have to,
Yeah.
like all of these different things.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think especially because of the pandemic, like, there were so many kids that just didn't learn how to do, like, super basic things, and the opportunity cost on top of it just created this really developmentally, um, I don't know, distorted it's really confusing for kids that have maybe some element of, like,
Yeah.
incredible social emotional awareness, but, like, can't go to the store, you know?
Right.
It's like, that's
It's
intense, I
stifled
agree with you.
their
Yeah,
development
yeah,
in a lot of different ways,
really
socially
did.
and just from an independence perspective. And then also with screens just being so prevalent, it was like, well, I guess this is what we're doing because we can't do anything else.
Right.
I like that. So just thinking about kind of as we think about like wrapping up, what's one small shift a parent could do to help their kids, support them with their resilience, with their connection, and with their agency in making smart choices?
Yeah, I would say, well, the very first thing I would say is just be sure that you're regulated, because it's so easy to just get anxious. And when we're anxious, we don't have the generosity of we don't have the awareness of the opportunities. Our palette is very small, and that we don't have our toolkit is a better metaphor. Our toolkits get very small. So I think being sure that we're regulated and then find the small opportunities, find the non-screen based passions or even the screen based passions that kids are sort of like really into and really help see if you can understand what those are. What is it about Roblox that is just so compelling right now? What are you playing? What games do you do? What do you like about that like really get curious because once you start to hear them talk, first of all, you realize that it isn't just brain rot, that there is usually something that's going on there for them. And because there is something that's going on for them, then you can, as a parent, like like dig into that a little bit more, so that you
Mhm.
can then boost the agency around something that they care about, and the connection around something that they already care about. Because I think when we come in with our like, I'm gonna, we're gonna go do karate or something, and they're like, why? Like they're just like, whatever, lady, you're not gonna tell me what to do. Like that's not it. I don't want to do that.
Right.
Even if I did want to do it, I don't want to do it now. It's like, oh,
I love
yeah,
that interest-based activities as a way of building
yeah.
connection and rapport with your child. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are some top podcasts or books or organizations that you talked about? A couple of them, and we'll link those in the show notes too. But if you have any kind of go tos that you want to share with folks, what would you recommend?
Yeah. There is a book called Behind Their Screens, which is by Carrie James and Emily Weinstein, which is about it's told from the kids' perspective of what is so engaging about screens. And it really is a way for parents to build empathy about what their kids are doing, and really understand how screens fit into their lives in a way that feels less threatening to us than like what we're seeing, which can be like, ah. So that's
Hmm.
one I recommend. There's another one called The Good Ancestor. I love the way that she thinks about the future, because one thing that we didn't actually talk about here is like
Oh
how
yeah.
crazy the world is right now for kids. And so when which is kind of like part of
Yeah.
what's going on with like the mental health
Right.
crisis. And if we
Mm.
can give kids as parents a longer term, a longer view of what
Hmm.
sort of how we can be designing for the future, it gives them
Hmm.
a sense, a lot more agency around things, and less
Mm.
sense of, which I think, honestly, I think a big problem, and one of the reasons, one of the giant sort of impulses behind the mental health
Ah.
crisis that we're seeing in young people right now, because it's crazy, the world.
Interesting. Well, that's an interesting parallel to, and maybe this could be like a whole next topic, is around like mental health and screens too, and the
So good. Yeah.
distraction and the cover up the band-aid for what's hiding underneath the surface of somebody who may
Yeah.
be struggling, and using
Yeah.
screens as a
Totally.
way to mitigate their own feelings of what's going on inside, and that feeling of helplessness and loss of agency, and not feeling like they can do anything about it.
Yeah. I mean, my kiddo with Epstein right now is like, what is this? Like, it is
What
so
is
intense.
happening?
What is happening? A
Right.
teen kid is like, "What am I doing here on this weird planet?" Like, so yeah, so that was, yeah, Robin's book is really great. And then the third one, I was like, I have so many, but I was just trying to think of like my third one. I was gonna say, like, I think really understanding developmentally about kids, and I'm really
Mm,
interested in this guy Michael Mead, and he's a
mm,
nerdy
mhm.
mythologist, and he has a podcast called the Mythic something, and he has a really interesting episode about what is going on for young people. In the young people historically have this inner fire, and how we work with that inner fire is really important. And if we don't work with it, it will come back to haunt us. And we can see a lot of distorted relationships to inner fire in the world today. And I think, like, I love his writing on what does it look like when we can really help hone and temper that inner fire in our kiddos, so that they have a lot more sense of agency, belonging, purpose, identity in the world, because that is, to me, the key to how we fix all this stuff. Is we really have to help our kids feel like that fire is channeled into something really meaningful, and our systems just aren't there yet. We're not designing for that. So I would say Michael Mead is my third.
But yeah, Living Myth podcast, Michael
Living
Mead.
Myth, that's the one. Living Myth, yeah.
Yes, and the fire, and what
Right.
to do with the anxiety, and how to harness those feelings when they're occurring. And anxiety needs someplace to go, anger needs someplace to do. And so, and boredom, and feeling hopeless, this has you need something to do. And so often screens are like, right there, you can pick it up, it's always there for you. It's got your
Yeah.
entertainment, it's got your sorts, boredom, it's got your fire, it's got all of these places to
Totally.
direct all of this energy without actually expelling it,
Right.
and it's like, what are the health implications of this energy actually not getting released,
Yeah.
physically, like from a physiological perspective, like what happens there? And I don't
Mm,
necessarily have the answer to that. And I don't know if anybody really does yet. Cause like I said, it's like the great
it's
human
new.
experiment of our
Yeah.
generation.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's a horrible way to think
But
about it, but it is. It's true.
it's like, what's
Well,
going on there physiologically? And I did this research when I was in school about watching horror movies and how it has
mm,
and comedy movies. We did this parallel between the two, and then also
cool.
stressors on the body. And actually, the body can't distinguish the difference between these different stressors, whether it's
What?
from a funny thing that you're like, you have a response in the body, or if you run stairs, or if you watch a horror movie, this physiological response is exactly the same, right?
Wow.
But
That's
like
intense.
initially,
Oh
right,
my
it's a
God.
trip. But if you're running stairs, that has all of these other physiological effects too, like on your heart and your respiratory
Right.
systems and all of these different things. But if you're just playing in
Right.
Minecraft or Roblox or something like that, then it's not going to have the same kind of benefits to your
Right.
body. Or with
Totally.
anger, or these things. And then it does that, do all of those feelings then get reabsorbed into the body? And then next thing you know, a parent is asking you to do the dishes, and you feel like you've just unleashed the dragon.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So-
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's such a good question. I feel like that's so interesting because I love that study, by the way. That's so cool. But I think that there's a sense that like gaming and like the internet in general, I think just in general, it has this pilot light effect where it just burns off like that fire, but it doesn't really help a kiddo or an adult for that matter integrate it or understand it or channel it
Mhm.
or kind of metabolize it in a way that makes it have some sort of like health generative benefit. It
Mm,
just like it just burns off. And to your
yeah.
point, he doesn't burn off enough because like I've had those dishwasher wars, like where it's like that's it, it's code here. And we've got like a category 5 like shit storm, excuse my language. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
like that could be intense. So yeah.
Yeah.
And you
Okay, so why don't we kind of come to a close here? We'll link all of
okay.
find you, bettyray.net.
Mhm.
And Betty Ray is speaking at schools and is rolling out a whole program with them. Do you want to share anything about the upcoming work that you're doing, or any last reflections, or how they can find you?
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So doing work with parents in small group labs to help go through this process of the scaffolded parenting challenges that I mentioned earlier, like how might we design for like an adolescent to come of age with digital media in a way that is proactive and positive, that doesn't hurt their fire, that strengthens their fire. So I'm working on a series of those labs. I do presentations in schools, whether it's to facilitate conversations about some of the movies, Can't Look Up, or whatever, some of the other variety of the movies that are out there now about young people in digital media. But I'm also
Mhm.
doing a school-wide parent education night, and then I'm doing a workshop with kids, and then also with adults to really build some community agreements around digital media because we know that that is super protective against some of the abuses and mental distress that we've seen when there's a community
Mhm.
experience. So I'm going to be doing that next month. I'm really excited for that. So thank you.
That's
Yeah,
great.
that's it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much
Happy to talk
for
to anyone.
making time. Yeah, I feel like we need a part
Amazing.
two and a part three.
Anytime.
So,
I love talking to you. It's so good. You've got such good questions
yeah.
and great experience. And so I'm really, yeah, really appreciate the chance to connect.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks again. All
All
right.
right. Talk
Go
to you
ahead and
soon.
listen and subscribe on Instagram, OakBloomOT, and on YouTube, OakBloomOT, and Facebook and LinkedIn. It's all OakBloomOT. And you can find us here in Oakland, California if you want in-person services or online, oakbloomot.com. Thanks for listening.
Amazing.